Hey there, and welcome to the next lesson in authentication and authorization. We're going to be talking about steps you can take to secure your identity structure. And by that, we're talking about Azure AD. So there are 5 major steps that you want to follow that are going to help you prevent identification catastrophes, we hope. They go as follows. First thing you're going to do is strengthen your credentials. You're going to reduce your attack surface. Automate your threat responses, use cloud intelligence, and enable end-user self-service. Now, mind you, most of these options do assume that you're using Azure Active Directory. All right, so let's begin with strengthening your credentials. So using strong auth methods is basically enforcing MFA for all your users, and you block any legacy protocol sign-ins. And this is done with really just a single click in Azure AD. It's a no-brainer. If you're running Azure AD, then click that button. The second, and this is a little counterintuitive, we've all experienced passwords expiring, for example, and you have to use capital letters, numbers, special characters, that sort of thing. It turns out that these particular things don't really provide the extra level of security that people expect. Now, you can use Azure AD's dynamic password system that will essentially ban all of the common misused passwords that people have been using over the years and just keep those from ever being used at all. And then you require your passwords to be at least 8 characters. Now, it's actually better for a password to be longer than it is to have special characters and the like in it. It's pretty common these days even for people to use passphrases. Every bit as easy to remember as a password, but can be of significantly long character count that your typical crack programs just aren't going to break into it. And by having a sufficiently sophisticated or lengthy password, you don't really need expiration dates. When you expire a password too often, you end up with people using the same passwords and then just throwing a number at the end of it, counting from 1 to 9 or whatever the history of passwords happen to be, and it doesn't really add any extra sophistication or protection and just irritates your end users. So just make sure that a good password is used in the first place and you don't have to expire it. And you want to also protect against any leaked credentials. So if any ID password combos get stolen or exposed to the so-called dark web, then Azure AD can actually do a report on that, but you do have to enable your password hash sync. And the Active Directory Federated Services Smart Lockout will protect against brute force attacks. Anything like this comes in, it'll see it and just slam the door on it before it can get anywhere. And you can use Windows Hello for 2-factor auth on your PC and mobile devices. The second category of protection is reducing your attack surface. So you want to block invalid authentication from ADFS. Things like POP3 IMAP, these are all older legacy authentication methods and they're very easy to compromise. And a lot of people still use them, so kind of be aware out there. You can set up your SharePoint and Exchange Online to use proper modern auth methods. And if you have Azure AD Premium, you can use conditional access policies as well. You'll want to restrict user consent operations. There will be some cases where a user can actually allow a program to run or access to be granted. Sometimes it happens within a group. You'll have people able to allow other people into a group that has access to whatever resources. And you can use application assignment and conditional access to restrict that sort of behavior. And then you want to implement Azure AD Privileged Identity Management. That's basically meaning that if someone has a upper level account that has a little bit more power than the average user, you want to make sure and restrict that. So not too many people should have administrative roles. All admin roles should have multi-factor authentication enabled. And your most extremely privileged roles should be used as seldom as possible and granted strictly as needed. So you basically enable the role long enough for a person to do the job, and then you shut it back down again. Automating threat responses. Azure AD Identity Protection can scan the user accounts, and if any of them are determined to be at risk, the ID will be flagged and will require the user to change their password right away. Next, we have Cloud Intelligence, and that's monitoring your Azure Active Directory environment. You want to use auditing and logging to get routine reports, and you scan those for any at-risk users, change IDs if necessary, certainly reset passwords where required. And you can check the health of your synchronized and connected environments. You have two types of reports that you're going to get and should take a look at daily if you're running an Azure AD environment, and that is the risky sign-in and risky user. And last, we're going to look at enabling end-user self-service. So that's going to include things like allowing users to simply unlock and reset their own passwords. This saves a lot of time on the admin side. I'm sure you've all familiar with how many requests you might get in a day to reset a password that someone's forgotten, or someone has an app that's trying to log in over and over and over again, and service passwords get locked out all the time. Enabling Azure AD Entitled Management. This lets non-administrators actually configure a certain degree of access for their teams, be it security groups, applications, access to package catalogs, etc. And you will have basically trusted members in a given group that have the authority to administer some of the rights and privileges within that group. And of course, you'll want to review privilege role assignments routinely and make sure that the right people have the right permissions to do the job, and that nobody should have more authority than is necessary to complete the work they're supposed to do. And if you follow all those steps, you'll make your overall environment just a little bit stronger and a little bit tougher for any aggressive behavior to get through. And that'll do it. Hop over to the next video where we're going to talk about single sign-on. See you there.